Hmm. We are on live. Now we are on live, sir.
Okay. So,
Sir, now we have to wait for some time. People are coming.
okay. So when we are waiting, what I suggest is that those people who came can just type their messages, introduce themselves so that I know who are there and what.
Uh,
They're free to just type and introduce themselves in the comments so that we know who are there or not.
ওকে, যারা যারা এখন দেখছেন যদি পারেন তো একটু কমেন্ট করবেন। ওয়েলকাম টু আওয়ার প্রোগ্রাম অনলাইন থিয়েটার টিউটোরিয়াল। This is fourth session, last session of first phase. Second phase will start from 19th July. For today, our guest is Chandradasan. He is from Kerala. Actor, director, playwright, and founder of Lokodharmi Theatre Group. He has own theatre village in Kochi. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Namaskar. We are very, very, very thankful and pleased for your presence. Many people is watching this live your session. I don't waste your valuable time. Please start your discussion about your following topics. Your first topic is folk form of Kerala and implementation in modern theatre, and second Rasasutra, and third relevance of Sanskrit play in the socio and political environment. Okay. Sir, during your conversation, during your discussion, if any other question will come, then by Facebook comment, then I will project that. Okay. Please start your discussion about your first topic.
Okay. I thank you, Deep, for getting me here, and I think I could satisfy your need to answer or explain these topics given to me today. But I don't know how much is it possible within this 1 hour of time. Now, I have a small request to people who are typing these messages and doubts. If you can do it in English, I also can read it. If you type it in Bengali, I may not be able to read and understand. I can just see that beautiful calligraphy of the Bengali letters.
This is Darun Uddog, means a good initiative.
Yeah, it doesn't bother about the grammar or anything like that. You try to make it in English. For example, Dipankar Sarkar has given two beautiful words. I don't know what exactly it means. Okay, fine, let it be there. See, I'm asked to talk on three different topics. One is the folk form of Kerala and its implementation in modern theatre. The second one is broadly titled as Rasa Sutra, and the third one is the relevance of Sanskrit plays in this current socio-political atmosphere. These three topics are having some connection each other, but they are different also to be approached differently. So I don't know whether you will be able to elaborate all the three, but I'll try to find out the connections between these topics. So let me start from the first thing, the folk form of Kerala and its implementation in modern theatre. Um, that's one of the biggest questions which we are the modern theatre is addressing itself. You can remove that Kerala out of it. Folk form and its implementation in modern theatre is also fine, but there's something little specific about Kerala. You can make it folk form of Bengal and its implementation on theatre, or folk form of Maratha and its implementation anywhere, or folk form of China and its implementation in theatre, etc. You can do it anyway. So let the Kerala thing remain a little aloof. We'll start speaking about the larger Indian context about it. See, to enter into the topic, we have to think about what is the modern theatre, folk form of Kerala and its implementation in modern theatre. So what is the modern theatre and how is it and what is it and why is it? That's the first question. That modern. See, according to the established history, norms and understanding, the modern theatre started somewhere in the 1880s in India when the British people introduced their kind of performing a play in Kolkata and then in Mumbai, then Bombay, which spread throughout the whole country. So it was an introduction of a new kind of drama where we have a stage where actors come as characters, speak dialogues, lines, interact, have a tension, have a creation of the atmosphere, and the story goes. And we see a play is being performed. This is mostly a kind of proscenium theatre, which we know, which have been further modified later, and we have that modern theatre developing in the country. So the basic thing is that this theatre, which we call modern theatre right now, is a gift of the British, our colonial masters. They introduced this form to us, and we were astonished to see this, very happy to see this, and followed them. And then the written plays of Shakespeare and other Western masters, Ibsen, and so many other people were introduced. We're happy to read it, understand it, accept it, assimilate it, and even imitate it. When I said we, who are this we? This we means it's those people who are closer to the British and also are in the universities, which has already started, studying academic literature and other subjects in the universities. It's the modern education. It's a education and other things where we are introduced with Shakespeare, the literature, the art, etc. And then this 150 years from 1880 to this day is a small time frame, but a lot of things has happened in world theatre, in literature, in culture in this 150 years. See the tremendous changes that have happened. Proscenium shifted away. The new experiments came in. New form of expressions, from expressionism to surrealism, all those things happened in painting and art. And then in literature and philosophy of life, new things emerged. We have the modern literature. Modernism becomes a kind of philosophy also. And we have So many different kinds of theater plays from realism. We went to Brecht, Samuel Beckett, absurd plays, so many different kinds of plays. And at this time, all these things came into our knowledge and into our practice. So this is not just, I was just saying that the modern theater is not just that theater which we got from the British and we imitated that proscenium kind of theater. We are introduced to a new kind of things. So it's not just performance, it's not just the literature, it's also a philosophy, and it's also an aesthetics which was different from us. The aesthetics was rooted in poetics. It's a 2500 years before text, written by Aristotle, and he has defined what are the qualities of a good play, how a play should be written, and when it is performed, what should be the effect on the audience. So that's the basic question. What should be the effect on the audience? And as students of theater, you may be knowing about catharsis, identification with the character, the text, and we feel that this great hero has undergone this kind of trouble and he's falling down from the heights to the lowest position possible, and we feel sorry for him, and we are also afraid that if it can happen to him, then it can happen to us also. So we feel that catharsis, we are becoming a little more better as human beings. So this is the kind of aesthetics associated with the Western modern theater. And we had this theater going on in many streams, in many pathways like that. And when the British left the country in 1947, some of the Indians, including Kapila Valsarana, Chandra Gandhi, and many other people like Mulkaraj Anand, they started saying that actually this modern theater or the implementation of this kind of Western theater or the British theater into India was part of a cultural colonization. It was another kind of activity which the British used to tell us that no, we are superior. Our theater is better. We have a more cultured and civilized way of performing a play. So your plays or your kind of life, your aesthetics is not as refined and as good as ours. So it's a kind of colonizing our culture, colonizing our own minds so that they can be the masters. And then after independence also, it was a kind of debate and what should be the kind of theater we should follow. What should be the Indian theater? Should it be exactly the same Western model or the British model which they gave us? And shall we go for our own kind of a theater? So that was a burning question that happened. And many people wrote about it, thought about it. We didn't do anything much. At the same time, the newer trends in the Western theater is coming on us. That's happening in one side. And in 1956, there was a very important event that happened in New Delhi. That's a meeting, a conference organized by the Sangeet Natak Academy, the newly formed Sangeet Natak Academy. So they called for a conference, a seminar, and that seminar is known as the drama seminar. The drama seminar. So there are different writers, directors, actors, critics, scholars from different parts of India were called to Delhi, and I think it was a 3-day affair, and different people presented papers or their arguments about the to be Indian theatre, what Indian theatre should be like, how it should look, how it should be practiced, what should be the mode of things. And this is a very important event. And many people suggested that it is not that Western model to be replicated or repeated or imitated or polished or refined. That is not the work an Indian theatre practitioner has to do. We have to use our own tradition of theatre and drama. And we have to remember that India is equally enriched with a tradition of performance. And they said poetics, yes, poetics is a very good sound aesthetical approach. It's accepted worldwide. Poetics resides not just the drama, the literature, music, and the art itself, how an art should be. So such a great book. But we have at the same time our own approach to aesthetics, and that is written in the book Natya Shastra. So Natya Shastra is a complete manual. The text is already available. It has been translated into different languages. Manomohan Ghosh from Kolkata translated into English, and that's available. It is available in Sanskrit, and it was translated to other vernacular languages, including Malayalam. So this book, or Natya Shastra, a 36-chaptered complete manual on theatre, tells us almost everything about theatre. How should be a play? How should be it written? What is the structure of the written material? How it should be enacted? What is the function of the actor? How he should be trained? How the actor has to be trained means each and every limb, from his eyes to cheeks to hands to neck to each and every part of the body has to be trained. And what is the musical accompaniments? What should be the singing? How the theatre is to be constructed? What should be the size of the theatre? And the architecture, the engineering of the theatre. So it's, and what should be the effect of theatre? And the second question which is asked to me is about Rasa Sutra. So it comes there. There are 2 chapters on Rasa, the Rasa theory and the Bhava and Rasa. I don't know whether I will be able to. Deep, are you telling me anything?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There is a question for you.
How are you planning to bring your theatre into the community after the pandemic? Is that a question? Swajit Bandobadhyay has asked me, how are you planning to bring theatre after the pandemic? The situation, we derive the communication process to our folk theatre in modern practice also. Yeah, I saw that question. It has been posted a little early, but I don't know how to answer it right now. It's a little going away from the topic we are discussing. But it's a concern for everybody. And as of now, we don't know when the pandemic is going to be over and when what will happen in the next 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. We only hope that it will be settling down. And I'm hopeful about human beings. I'm hopeful about our science. I imagine that there will be some vaccine or something like that, which will keep us safe. Until then, we have to live on like this, maybe online and no social public life. So it's post-pandemic kind of thing. We don't know how is it going to develop, but I'm hopeful about the theatre. Theatre is not just happened today. It's not a new thing. It has, as I was just telling you, it has a tradition of 2,500 or 3,000 or more years. It has traveled through different kinds of tragedies and happenings, different phases of history. It has overcome all these kind of things, and is still changing itself, modifying itself, reshaping itself. And as long as human life is here in this earth, as long as human live here, we should have that inner urge, inner thirst to meet people face to face, to speak face to face, to perform each other. That means the theater will be there. So it's just a waiting. It's just a waiting for the pandemic to settle down. Until it settle down, let us be safe and see that it doesn't grow beyond our hands, so that we can go back to that. No, such things has happened, like this shutting off theaters. This is not the first time in the history of theater. When the plague was there in Europe, all the theaters have been shut down, including the great Globe Theatre of Shakespeare. The Globe Theatre has been shut down for months, for 5-6 months. It has been shut down during the plague. And it was much more tougher then, because I'm just debating away, but I'll answer this. The thing is that people are not coming outside. They are afraid. The poverty was much more higher. The poverty and the trouble was much more higher than the present day. And even people who are a lot of thieving and burglary, all those things are happening when this plague was happening on. Even when somebody is dead and a dead body is left in the street after the plague, and if you go and touch the dead body, you will get the plague back. But even then, people went and searched for ornaments and all those things to snatch it off beyond this plague. So it was a very tough time. That's one thing. The second one was, at that time, theater was not that much welcome as right now. Many people, especially the ruling class, many of them thought that, no, these theater people are not very nice people. They are having all the troubles. All those things are there. So they are seen as people who are doing all the sin, all the bad things which made the God angry and send the plague. So theater people are supposed to be the reason of the plague, in a way. So in that sense, it was not helpful. So Globe Theatre has been shut down. But in that time, Shakespeare wrote King Lear. And the three major tragedies has been written at that time. That's what history say. Before that, the writing of Shakespeare was, he was writing for the day of the rehearsal. He just write that and bring it to the actors and then do it like that. So he sat down simply in his room and started writing. So three great plays came out like so, and then it reopened, it flourished, and the theater continues to go. So I think that all these people are sitting and asking you to give suggestions to organize theater online or how to do, what to do. They are always thinking and very creative inside and started doing, imagining things, and they'll do a little bit, and then suddenly something will open up. And at least we have this online facility right now, which Shakespeare did not have then. He cannot think of streaming a place online or nothing like that. But theater is, many theaters in the whole world is streaming their plays, all the productions, trying to communicate with their audience, how to hold their audience. Each theater has their own audience. They are trying to satisfy them. At the same time, we are very sure that this is not a medium which is to be seen online. This is to be seen alive, in the space, where the actor is, very intimate, so that we hear them really, we see them fully, not a close-up. And this is the close-up on this online things is another media, the TV or the film, but they are doing it. So till then, what we can do, we are also doing it. We are also streaming our plays in between. We are having our online talks, online interactions. All these things are happening, and it's in a way it's good that I can sit in my room and talk to you right now there. Otherwise, you should have given my flight ticket and taken me to Calcutta, and some of you will come and some of you may not come. This will be restored, stored up in the net, and you can see it maybe tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Rethink about it. So that facilities, that technology is much better right now than the ancient days. So we can think of things. Whatever you do is good. and we need not wait for the complete ideal kind of thing to happen. That is not happening in theater, even in the real theater. We plan and dream a lot of things. We execute 50% of it, and 30% of it happens actually. And out of that, another 10% is being communicated. So it's the ideal thing. Our dream is there, but that dream makes us do things. So whatever you do is fine. Go ahead with whatever little crazy idea you have. Try it. No problem of failing. And the history of modern theater means the experimental theater, or the new theater, or the alternative theater is the history of attempting, trying, failing, and then succeeding somewhere, and then going ahead. It's always keeping trying new things and finding new things and trying to uh, rework on us. So let it be ahead. So what I was trying to say that to get back to our point of discussion where we left.
Yes, sir. Sir, please tell about Kuriyattam, Theyyam, or Krishnattam, and I want to know Yakshagana also.
Yeah, the thing is that what I was trying to say in this talk is that the folk theater is not just about a form. It's not just Krishnattam or Theyyam or Kudiyatam or Jatra or Nautangi. It's not just the externals of the form. Why the form? Why you have to go for? Why modern theater has to go for the form? It is not the externals or the costume. See, the costume of the Yakshagana is like that. The costume of Kudiyatam is like that. The music is like that. This is the instrument. So it's not just adopting or copying or imitating a folk traditional form. Let it be Kudiyatam, let it be Yakshaganam, let it be Jatra, let it be Nautangi, let it be Perkutta, let it be Chow. So what we are trying to do, many of us is trying to do is just to imitate, to get certain aspects of it and do it. To understand what is Kudiyatam or these things, it's very easy right now. You can just type it on Google and then go for, and they can get a lot of materials about Kudiyatam. You can have visuals, you can have performances, you can watch it, understand. But the question on us as modern theater practitioners is why that? That's the question. And then it comes how. I was trying to answer that part in my talk. I think I have to explain it and then go to the specificities of Kudiyatam or Yakshaganam or whatever is it. So what I was trying to tell you is that our theater was trying to create an Indian way of performance. It is out of the Western mode of practice. And then these theater people, these people in the 1956, or those people from 1940s, they have started writing about it. Reminded us of the tradition of Indian theater, the Natya Shastra, the way the Natya Shastra is creating a performance, all those things. And also, they told us that, see, we have the playwrights like Kalidasa, Bhasa, Shudrak, and this marvelous, great plays written by Sanskrit masters, playwrights. So that comes to that part of the question, like the relevance of Sanskrit plays, etc. Let it be there. So we were reminded that we are not just a very poor community which do not have any theater tradition. We have a rich theater tradition in our literature. Of course, it is in Sanskrit. There's another aspect to that. I will come to that later. And of course, we have that way of performing it. The Natya Shastra has already told us. Even the aesthetics, methodology, everything is there. So they said this is one way. You have to go back and revisit that. You have to re-look into Natya Shastra. You have to re-look into the texts of Kalidasa, Bhasa, and other Sanskrit plays. And then we have to create a theater, a modern theater, based on that. We are equally important as the Greek or the Western theater people are. So that's the one thing. So that tendency or the trend to create our own theater, an Indian theater, started from there. And then many people, you may know the names and you have seen performances. has started looking back into our traditional performances. By the 70s and 80s, a lot of plays, including our own Kavalam Narayana Panikar, started performing his Sanskrit plays in Sanskrit itself. And there he has used the tradition of Kerala folk forms as well as the tradition from the Natya Shastra, fused them together and created his own theatre. At the same time, Habib Tanvir was trying to do it in his own way. Ratan Tiyam was trying to do it in his own way. B.V. Karanth was trying to do it in his own way. So this search to create a kind of our own form of theatre started along with independence. And the question which we are asking about the folk form and its implementation in Kerala theatre, a detailed look into the folk form, different forms like Tayyam or whatever is the name, is part of it. And I stop it here and then I have to go back into the history of Sanskrit theatre once more about the Rasa Sutra and all those things, because that's also to be clarified. See, when we say that we have a very rich, great tradition of Sanskrit plays and Natya Shastra, then you have to ask what happened to that. From the 5th century AD to say 12th century AD, the importance of Sanskrit as a language came down. There are only very few people who know Sanskrit and who studied Sanskrit and who practice Sanskrit in their day-to-day life. And also, who are the people who are practicing this theatre and watching this theatre? That's a very important question which we have to ask as an independent nation. We are living in a secular nation with different races, different kinds of people, different ethnic varieties, from Manipur to Kashmir to Kerala or south to north. Different kind of people are living together. Yes, we say we are broadly Indians, and we don't know what is the border of the Indianness. Does it expand beyond our geographical border to other nations, etc.? This question is there. But there are differences also. We have to accept there are differences also. And the other thing which I want to emphasize that those people who are practicing the Sanskrit theatre or this place were also a minority of privileged people. I emphasize the word, it's a minority of a privileged people were studying Sanskrit, were practicing it, were watching it, and the majority of the population was out of this practice. I am saying this not to make or negate the importance of this great knowledge, great practice, great system. But we have to be aware that India is such a divided country. It's divided at multiple levels. That's a socio-political situation at multiple levels, from one ethnic community to the other ethnic community, from one caste to the other caste. See, it's only the Brahmins or the top in the class system were allowed to get into this Natyagraha. And one thing I want to try to tell you is that after the disappearance of Sanskrit, means getting the Sanskrit getting less important, what happened is that the practice of the Sanskrit plays came down. We have this Shakuntala, we have the text of Bhasa, we have Mudra Rakshasa, all these plays are there, and we have Natya Shastra. But we do not know how exactly these plays are performed. We don't have a model, a living model to see, oh, this is the way Shakuntala has been performed according to Natya Shastra in that time, at least in the time of Vikramaditya or when the playwright was there, or in our tradition. So the traditional way of mode of performing a Sanskrit play according to our aesthetic heritage is not present. It's not there. We can only read and imagine it should have been like that. Yes, we have one or two or maximum three of close performances. We have Kudiyattam remaining in Kerala. Kudiyattam is 1500 years old and they are performing this plays according to a system which is closer to Natya Shastra but not exactly as Natya Shastra. That we have to understand. And then we have the Ankiya Nat from that Assam belt where they have Sanskrit plays. Shankar Mahadevas reinvented it, tried to create his own kind of performance. That's also has something based on Natya Shastra, not completely following Natya Shastra. And we had that Kuchipudi dance theatre from Andhra Pradesh, which also had something connected with Natya Shastra. But of the three, the closest one and the most ancient one, the oldest one is Kudiyattam. So this Kudiyattam may give an idea about how this has been performed. But I repeatedly tell you that it is not exactly following Natya Shastra or the principles of Natya Shastra. These actors of Kudiyattam, which we call the Chakyas, it's a community. These Chakyas has improvised on the concepts of Natya Shastra. They have modified it. They have created a new kind of system, which is Kudiyattam, and they started to do it. Of course, the essential base is Natya Shastra, and it is a Rasa Sutra or the Rasa theory that takes it forward as the basic stone, a stepping stone. And it has been done in spaces known as Natigriha or Kutambalam, a temple of performance. You can translate as it's Kutambalam. And mostly these Kutambalams are placed inside a proper temple. So there is a temple, say for example, the temple at Trichur or the temple at Iringalkuda also has a Kutambalam there. That means as a part of the temple ritual, there are performances of a Sanskrit play, a Kudiyattam, inside this temple. So we can see that also. And it's also said that this performance is a kind of devotion. It's a kind of ritual. We are trying to give it to the God. So it's a part of a ritual. See, the important question here is, who can see this? So it's only the people who are allowed to get into the temple walls, inside the temple walls, can go into this Kutambalam and see the performance. And you know, the temples were not open to all, at least to all the Hindus. No, it's only a group of minority Hindus or the top caste Hindus are allowed to inside. Even the lower caste people can stay outside the temple wall and then pray and then go back. They are not. There were big struggles and protests and strikes to allow to open the temple doors. Even Mahatma Gandhi has came down to Vaikam, and that's known as Vaikam Satyagraha, so that people can, all Hindus can get inside the temple. That's the history. It happened in 1930s. And in Guruvayur, that temple, there's also strikes and struggles and that happened outside the temple premises, which forced them to allow everybody to get into the temple. So this going to a temple, for all the so-called Hindus, we have to define who is a Hindu or not again. That's a very tough political question. So that is something which happened only after 1930s or 40s, almost along with a kind of renaissance that happened inside the different communities inside India, and also with the attainment of freedom. And India accepted as a nation, a republic of different ethnical communities. So it's that republic that connected together, who can possibly live together as a free nation, as a sovereign nation, where the right is equal for everybody. There is no specific right for an elite. So that happened after the independence. And then the doors of the temples are open. Not just the doors of the temple, the doors of the Kutambalams are open, the doors of Kudiyatam is open, and then uh, people outside this privileged class have started seeing this performance. And naturally, the importance of the temple as a cultural center or a political center also came down. It is trying to uh, get it regained. I'm not going into the direct political things, but we are trying to go back into the ancient Manu days to establish the Brahminical supremacy again on the whole of India. Let it be there. So, one thing that happened along with this, that to this Sanskrit theatre, this great tradition of Kudiyatam, is that it is also forced to come out of the temple premises to public spaces like auditoriums, like town halls. More people started organizing it, not for religious things, for to be done as an aesthetic thing, to be done as a performance, to address to all kinds of people. And new artists from beyond the community of Chakyas, which are the next to the Brahminic position in the system of Kerala, have started studying it. And education institutions like Kalamandalam, where anybody can go and apply and get an admission if you're talented, have started. It becomes a secular art form. I just had to finish this segment by saying that now one of the great scholars or pundits or connoisseurs of Kudiyatam and Sanskrit theatre and Natya Shastra and this tradition living in India, his name is K.G. Paulos. He's a Christian. So he studied Sanskrit. He is a Sanskrit scholar. He was the vice chancellor of Kerala Kalamandalam. I'm happy to say that he is actually the chairman of Logatharmi Theatre Group also. So this thing is that it opened beyond the caste and community equations, and so that we could approach this great tradition as a common tradition, as a heritage which everybody has a right to acquire and look into. That's one thing. So then what the other people, the other majority was doing? That's the next question. When the minority was going inside and seeing Kudiyatam or seeing Kalidasa performed, what the majority of the other people throughout India was doing, they had this folk theatre. And the folk theatre is the theatre of the populace. It's the Logatharmi. It's of the people, of the common people, of the downtrodden people, of the marginalized people, of the poor people, of the people who have been suppressed. And they expressed their concerns about life, their anxieties about life, their creativity, their own kind of devotion to nature and their own concepts of gods, all these things, whatever they wanted to express through different folk forms throughout the nation. And these two traditions we have to take into account. When we are taking into the theatre tradition of India, we have to go back into the theatre tradition of India, then we have to, in one level, go to the Sanskrit theatre tradition. Of course, Kudiyatam, Natya Shastra, that tradition, classical Sanskrit-based theatre. Also, we have to look into the folk traditional theatre, which is so vibrant all over the country. That's how these folk traditions has been visited by the theatre people. Swagata, the 13th place which we have obtained by Bhasa from Kerala, it has been found in the home of a Chakyar. All the scripts has been found 13, and believe all these 13 has been written by Bhasa. Because of certain reasons, there is no proof that it's all by him, but we believe it is by him because there are connections in between. And this place has been translated into Malayalam. We have all the texts here, and we have performance of those plays. Right now, many people, almost everybody is trying to do it, and I have done one or two. Kavalam Narayana Panikkar is the master director who has been directing and designing all these plays performed in Sanskrit itself. He is one person who has translated plays into Malayalam, which we are using. So it's commonly accepted it's being performed. to suit our own needs. We are not copying it exactly what he has written. And one good thing about the Sanskrit play and its performance in Kudiyatam or in Natyashastra, that's one thing which I want to highlight. When we said that, no, I will connect these two questions and explain it. When I said that, the 1956 drama seminar asked us to look into the folk and classical tradition of India to create our own theatre. It should be different from the Western theatre mold. Then what it should be like? Because the answer to the question lies in the way the Sanskrit plays has been performed. I'll make it very simple and direct. I'll just say that, no, I can elaborate it, explain it to make things brief. Suppose time is already running off. In the Western theatre, in poetics, according to Aristotle, it is a text-based theatre. The playwright is the most important person. The actor is just to communicate what the playwright has been written. So it's the written text which is the most important thing, and you are not allowed to deviate. When you find who is the supreme focus, it's a playwright. You read poetics and see that no, almost out of the 6 characteristics that makes a good play, more than 4 is attributed to the playwright. Actor is a small entity there. The other technicians like set design, it's not that much mentioned. The music is there half in half. So it's a text-based thing. We are seeing how brilliantly this playwright has structured the characters, molded the characters, how he has told the story, how he arranged the plot, and how it affects the character written by the playwright, affects the audience through catharsis is the main thing. But in Sanskrit theatre, in Natyashastra, it is totally opposite. So what I was trying to say that the Indian tradition is opposite to that of the Western tradition. Here it is the actor who is the prime important person. It's an actor-centric thing. We are not going to see what happened to Sita or what Ravana did. We know the story already. We want to see how this performer is performing that character. So it is an actor-specific thing. And Natyashastra, one thing that is underlined in Natyashastra and which is further taken by the actors of Kudiyatam is that acting is not imitation of what the playwright has written. It is not imitation, it's not mimesis, as the Western theatre has told us. We are not to imitate and identify as the character. When I am acting as Ravana, I am not Ravana. I am just performing Ravana. So you are not seeing a Ravana on stage. You are seeing an actor performing or demonstrating or narrating or telling you the story of Ravana. I am nowhere becoming identified as Ravana. I am not at all Ravana. I am an agent to perform a Ravana. So you're seeing me basically. Or you can say that to make it a compromise. You are seeing both the persons. You are seeing both the actor and the character. And as an actor, I am not going to be steady stuck onto the character. I will be shifting. Sometimes I become a commentator. I will comment on this character. I will get out of the character. And in Kudiyatam, there is an important thing which is known as Pagarnatam. Means, when in one scene, I'll just elaborate a small scene where it's from Ramayana. When Ravana was coming on his pushpak, he saw a big Mount Everest blocking his way in the sky. He was in the flight. He was in the pushpak Vimana, his aeroplane. Suddenly, this big Mount Everest, blocked his way. He got very angry. He came down and he took the Mount Everest. He's a very powerful person. He has 20 hands. He put this Mount Everest, he shaked it, he took it onto his hands and then he threw it onto the sky. Then it went up, came down, he holded it again and then he threw it further and it went heights and heights and He was just playing this Mount Everest as he was playing with a ball or something which he can play around. So this is an act which we call Kailasodharana, the lifting of the Mount Kailasa. It's a very important segment in Kudiyattam and also in Kathakali, which actors do. Then, what happened is the question. When this person was doing it, on the Mount Kailasa, Shiva is there, and Parvati was there, his wife. When Shiva and Parvati was quarreling at this moment, that's what the imagination of the Chakyar tell us. Parvati was very angry with Shiva because, Shiva, almost all our gods are not very single, very straight kind of people. They have their secret wives and all those people. That's not a very big scene in our epic. So he has a secret lover in his head, in between the hair. Ganga is there. So whenever Parvati goes away, Ganga comes down and she will sit down on the lap. And when Parvati comes, she goes and hide. And Parvati found out it is there. So she was quarreling with Shiva. And at this precise moment, this Mount Everest is being thrown up and down. Suddenly Parvati got afraid because she doesn't understand what's happening. It's bigger than an earthquake. So she got very angry. Very afraid. So forgetting about the quarrel, she went and hugged Shiva. And Shiva was so happy because the quarrel ended there. And then he just meditated to find out why this happened. Oh, this is Ravana doing it. I am very thankful to Ravana for doing this, so that my wife would come and reconcile her anger with me. So he gave him a boon. What do you want? And he gave a special weapon to him as a reward. So that's the story. So when this actor, I'm coming to this thing, when this actor is performing this scene, it's a long scene, just with music and percussion, no spoken words. This actor will perform the scene, say, for 1 hour or 45 minutes. He starts as Ravana, throws it, then shifts his character to Shiva. So what Shiva was feeling, what happened to them? Then he shifts himself to Parvati. Then he may shift to a river. And what happens to a fish in the river? And what happens to an animal in the thing, a deer there? So he can perform the effect of this Kailasodharana by shifting the character from his entry, which is Ravana, in which that's a costume. So he's there and he shifted from there with a small change in the body posture or a slight change in the costume. He gets converted to Shiva. And from there, he just changes his body posture a little and becomes Parvati. Then he comes back to Ravana. Then he goes like that. So he can transcend from one character to the other character and move to the next character and move to the next character. And he can elongate the scene. He can prolong the scene as much the actor would like to. He can finish it in 10 minutes. He can perform it for 45 minutes. He can perform it for 1 hour depending upon his mood and the mood of the audience and the kind of audience who can understand this. So this kind of technique which allow a character in the costume of Ravana to perform the role of Shiva or Parvati or Ganga or a deer or a fish without changing the costume. We don't need all these characters. So the narrative technique can be controlled by the actor. So it is not just a realism. It's not a realistic kind of theater where you perform to make believe. It's a theater of an imagination. So the Indian theater is a theater of imagination. And it is created in the imagination of the audience, means the actor communicated to the audience and the audience share it. So the participation of the audience, as if he is participating in a ritual, is happening in Indian theater. See, this kind of special provision where you can control the narrative mode of the play, control the narrative technique of the play, is a common feature to many of the folk traditional forms of India. And Indian theater as I told a little before, it is the actor who is the center. It's not to tell the story in a very kind of systematic, round up, well made style, as in Western theater. So that's major change. Where the shift from the playwright to the actor, and the actor has the right to interpret and re-understand the text written by him, to change it, to add anecdotes, to add subplots, to deviate, to critique, to demonstrate, and in between show his own skills. The actor will be performing, and we'll see that no, this person can sing very well. He can dance. He can play a music instrument. He can do jugglery. He can do somersaults. See the Chow, the Mayurbhanj Chow. He does all those things. So it's the character becomes sometimes out of context. He keeps the character for some time. Okay, I'm playing this character now for another 10 minutes. I'm going to keep this character out. I'm going to show myself. I'm going to show my skill, etc. See, anyway, I'm just not saying that no, the modern theater is going to use exactly like this, but we have to understand that the narrative mode of Indian theater is one, it's very flexible. And one playwright and one director who understood it to the core is Habib Tanvir. You go and see Habib Tanvir's play. You just see the Charan Das show. See, the thief is there. The police is there. I think you all know the story of Charan Das, or at least if you don't know, go and read the text. That's one text I will ask every theater people to read in India. That's one modern classic theater which has all the essence of our traditional theater, our performance tradition, our contemporary socio-political reality. Everything is fused into one. It's a real Indian play. See, there's a thief, Charan Das, who is a very honest thief. He's a thief, and the police is after him, just like the police is after many thieves, even right now. And there's a group of singer narrators, who comes in between and sing the story. They'll sing and perform. And all these actors will be acting different roles. They are narrators and singers at certain moments, then they shift to the characters. And in one particular sequence, I remember, the thief is being chased by the police. The thief runs in. And suddenly he enters the stage and sees that there's a group of people singing the story. The thief also joins them and starts as a singer. And then the police comes. The police sees that there's a singer narrating the story. He also comes and joins. And so now the police, the thief, and the other singer actors, they all together sing and narrate what happened to Charan Das and sing the story. And when the song is over, suddenly this character playing as the thief gets back to the thief and just runs away. The police also becomes the police, chases him. See, the way the actor or the story or the play can shift it from one character to other character, and even beyond the character as a narrator, interpreter, all these things is highly possible in the folk traditions. And the Kerala theatre or any folk theatre is concerned about two things. One is they are basically narrating a story. We are story narrators. All the theatre is doing that. Modern theatre is also doing that. So we have to narrate a story. It's only the mode of narrating the story and the reason for the narrating the story. The reason you show in your interpretation. How do you approach the subject? And even if the text is, maybe I'm answering the last question, how the Sanskrit plays are important in the present socio-political situation, which is a totally different socio-political situation than the socio-political situation where Kalidasa, Shudraga, or anybody has written it. We are now living in a different society, different kind of political and social situation. And when we are going to do this play, why we are going to do this play? Because we want to tell something which concerns about the current living situation, current socio-political situation, to be expressed through this text. We are not going to reproduce the text as such, as the Western theatre has asked us to do. We have the freedom to interpret the text. We have the freedom to slightly change the text. So when I am going to do Shakuntala, all these questions are related. That's why I said no. All these three questions about Rasa or about the folk theatre or about this theatre, I just take the Kerala theatre. Kerala folk is not that much important. It's a folk theatre anywhere. And I'm just at this moment, I'll just tell you one thing because I should not be misunderstood. This is not just the issue of India. This difference between the Western theatre, the form of Western theatre, and the difference between our Indian theatre is not just Indian. It is a pan-Asian thing. It's the Oriental theatre as such. It's exactly same in Japanese Snow theatre and Kabuki theatre. It's the same as Chinese opera. It's as in Balinese dance. So it's the West and the East have two different approaches. The West, we can say the Occidental theatre and the Oriental theatre, or the Western theatre and the Eastern theatre. And India is in the Eastern theatre segment, but we are a very important segment in that Eastern kind of theatre. That's the most important thing. Japanese theatre is there, Chinese theatre is there, but it is much more clear and evident and practicing and present in the Indian theatre content. So it is a common thing cutting across the Asia. So Asia is one cultural identity, at least in theatre. The whole of Asia, beyond its ethnic differences, beyond the Indo-Chinese, Japanese conflicts and difference of opinions, is a continuous cultural continuity is there. It's opposite to the Western culture modes of aesthetics. So coming to that, so then we have slight differences from Kerala to Bengal to everywhere, but totally this Oriental theatre has this aspect of story narration. They have the freedom on in all the Eastern theatre, all the Indian theatre or the thing. It is an actor-centric thing. We are not going to narrate the story in a very make-believe system. It's beyond the realism. It's not the daily kind of thing that you see. It's extra daily, or it is not just very realistic. It's a theatre of imagination where you have the freedom to interpret it. So when I'm going to take a text from Sanskrit, when I'm going to do Shakuntala, the basic question is why Shakuntala now is the question. See, one interesting thing I'll tell you. I was invited to direct a play for the students of the National School of Drama. I don't know whether anybody of them is hearing me right now. It's a part of their study of Sanskrit plays and the tradition of doing it. So I have to do a play. And since there are more girls than boys in the batch, I was forced to find out a play which has role or spaces, more spaces for girls than boys. And in everywhere in the whole world, we know it's a male-centric thing. You have all the male characters, all the 10 male characters, and you have one female character or 1.5 female character. So there's a question which the women folk have to address themselves. How to write plays with more women, except in Lysistrata, that Greek play. We have all the male characters there. So when I look into different Sanskrit plays, Shakuntala is one which has more women. It's a possibility of having more women in it. So I decided to try to Shakuntala. And when I met the students in NSD on the first day, I found they are not very happy with the selection of the play. One is they have studied this play in detail in their first year as a literature. So they know the in and outs of the play, and they are a little bored about the play. So they thought, no, if you can do a new play which has not been discussed, it will be a little more interesting. But I said we are going to do Shakuntala. And the body language was little kind of thing. Then I asked, why Shakuntala now? Why should we do Shakuntala now? Then one of the smart girls asked me back, yes sir, that's a question we want to ask you. Why should we do Shakuntala now? Can't we do something else? Then I said, the first part is very good. The second part is not the answer. I asked them back, so as a person living now, when you read Shakuntala, what strikes you most? What do you think is the relationship of the story of this play has to do with your life? Then people started saying that no, it's about the betrayal of Dushyanta to Shakuntala. It's about how the men uh, attracts women and forces them into love, and then after getting what they wanted, just forget them and discard them off. So it's about man-woman relationships. It's about the misuse of love. So these are the things that's happening even in our daily life. We can hear so many stories about very contemporary Dushyantas and Shakuntalas. You can hear stories about rape, marital rape, all these things are there. So the story is connected to a very sensitive contemporary girl out because of this. Then I told them, yes, that is it. That is the relevance of Shakuntala to you right now, living in this present society. So we are going to perform that. We are going to highlight that this is the text. This is the meaning of the text right now here. So we are going to do that aspect of it. Not to go word by word and line by line, not to go the conventional interpretations on those things. We want to highlight this by doing this text. This is what each Sanskrit class is Sanskrit or Greek. Like the question is there from Supankar, like Sophocles or Aristophanes or Aeschylus, whatever, whoever is it. Even a contemporary playwright, even Shakespeare, even a more closer playwright, even Godot, whatever is it, is being done. So it is a link and relevance to the current socio-political situation around us. How this play comments it, how the play interprets it. And one easiest thing for us than the Westerners is that we have a tradition of interpreting text by the actor. We have that tradition, we have that freedom ascertained to us in Natya Shastra, in our tradition, so that we are free to reinterpret it. I have to remind you that Kalidasa did not copy the story of Mahabharata as such. He has introduced the story of the ring. There are arguments about the reasons why he did that. And Bhasa did not wrote exactly what the story of Mahabharata said. He has reinterpreted. He said this is another possibility. He has reworked on the script. He has highlighted certain other things which are not in the original. So they have used, the Sanskrit playwrights has used the story of the epic Ramayana or Mahabharata to say something which they wanted to do. They are retelling the story for their own reason, to tell something new. That's why they become original playwrights. That's why their plays remain after so many years. Many other playwrights should have been there, and they are forgotten. And we have also many other performances based on Ramayana and Mahabharata happening even today, and we are not taking them very serious. Like we take Shakuntala or Bhasa or Karnapharam or all the 13 plays of Bhasa. So if they have taken that freedom, Kalidas and Bhasa has taken the freedom to reinterpret the original resource of Mahabharata or Ramayana, then we have the same right. As a practicing director and actor, I have the same right to do the same thing on the work of Bhasa and Kalidasa. I can reinterpret it for my own reasons. The reason means my own reasons and for my own socio-political reality. I believe that theater is a political, cultural, political activity. It's a political activity, it's a cultural activity, it's a cultural, political activity. So it means that we have to do that. And one thing this great tradition of Sanskrit theater gave us is the right to do that in your own way and to rework on the narrative mode of it. You can enter the text anywhere, you can get out of the text anywhere, you can remold it and rework it, which the Western theater is not giving you. And with this knowledge, you can go into the folk traditional forms. So all the 13 plays, the productions and performances are initiated. I'm answering to Sugata Pandit right now, the influence of these productions, performances in Kerala theatre. So we have many productions in Kerala based on them. All the productions, all the texts of Bhasa and the Kalidas has been directed by Kavalam Narayana Panikkar, and has performed everywhere in India, outside India, in Kerala also. And there was a lot of criticism for it and upload for it, debate about it. But he was able to initiate this aspect of theater, you are right to reinterpret it. You are right to create a new language. He was not imitating Kudiyatam. He was not imitating any particular form. He was creating a form based on the music, rhythm, and choreography taken from different multiple sources, including the classical Kudiyatam kind of thing, along with the folk tradition of Teyyam, Padani, and many other folk traditional music and performance forms. He connected those two, of course, with Carnatic music and the Sobhana Sangeeta system of Kerala. It's our own music system. We have a traditional music system other than the Hindustani and Carnatic, a classical musical system which has its own rhythmic pattern, which is not a Sobhana Sangeetam. So he has blended all these things and made a kind of thing. In acting, he has used Kudiyatam technique, the vocal technique of Kudiyatam, and also the acting technique from folk traditional forms, and also from Kalarippayattu, which is a martial art form. So he has created a kind of actor training technology, a methodology, and a performance system. It's his own signature system, which is not to be copied by anybody else. But he is one who initiated the idea that this is possible in theater. This can be done in theater. So it emphasized this dialogue, took the dialogue forward so that different people can try differently, approaching the same classical text and also in approaching the folk traditional forms. I have directed Karnabharam, which has been performed widely. I think I have performed Karnabharam twice in Kolkata. I'm saying Kolkata because I think many of the people are from Kolkata only. And I have performed almost every part of the nation. We have more than some 335 shows all over India. And I have done some other plays also in vernacular languages. There are other directors who have directed Sanskrit plays. It's a kind of new system. It gives you a new kind of questions and problems when you're approaching a Sanskrit text, which is different from approaching a Western play or a contemporary play. And this kind of new demands from the text to create your own narrative mode, to create your own performance language, your own acting methodology, even to work with an actor to create an acting design. It's not just a visual design outside. It's a design with which the actor character transitions takes place. The actor narrator character positions takes place, where one actor and the audience relationship. There's always live communication between actor and audience in our traditional theater. It's more participation. This is what Jerzy Grotowski or Antoine Artaud was trying to repeat in their kind of thing. This is what Richard Schechner was trying to do in his theater and in creating the performance theory. See, that's one thing. When we are trying to follow the Western mode of theater very blindly, the West was trying to look back to India and to the East. Of course, Brecht saw Chinese opera. Arthur saw the Balinese theater, not Indian theater. He has not seen that ritualistic Indian theater. So here they're looking to the East to rework their own theater, to recreate their own theater, to go beyond what they were trying to do then. So this is distributed in the Sanskrit theater tradition of India. This is distributed in the folk traditional theater of India. And maybe I have to just, since there's a specific part of the Kerala element in the topic given to me, I was generally speaking about the folk traditional forms, which is cutting across India. And our theater, if you see the acting pattern, you can see that there's a lot of melodrama is there, the dialogue delivery, this bombastic kind of thing. It comes from Nautanki. From Nautanki, it comes down. It comes from the Sangeet Natak tradition. The Sangeet Natak, which was so popular from the 1910 to 1950 all over India, started from Maharashtra, Gujarat, came down to Karnataka, to Tamil Nadu, to Kerala. I think it was there in the northern belt also, I'm not very sure. But the Sangeet Natak tradition was very important. They were copying the Western proscenium theater. They are modifying it. Rustam Bharucha has written it. He said, that is the first Indianization that happened. They followed the Western theater, the new theater that the British masters gave us, but they used a lot of curtains, painted curtains behind from the Raja Ravivarma tradition of palaces, gardens, etc. They put a lot of classical music into it. The actors come sighing around, yell out. Audience said once more, they sing again. Then they have this bombastic dialogue scenes and high melodrama. They enact it. So that's not the way of Western theatre. It's not the rounded characterization, it's performance. They perform in the characters. So the Indian actor is performing the characters. That we can see what happens in a Hindi film and a Hollywood film. In Hindi film, when Amitabh Bachchan is performing the character, not just becoming the character. But if we see a Hollywood film, they're trying to be more closer to the character. The Indian audience like this performance. It's not anything bad, but it's another way of performing. It's another way of narrating a story of a character. Just understand that. So performance is not that much bad, but at times it goes over, and we are just fed up with that. No, it's also there. The limits, we have to be thinking about limits of performance. It's there. But so I was coming back to the Kerala specific thing. See, we in Kerala has a lot of folk performance forms. These folk traditional forms are there in each village. For example, Deep has asked me about Theyyam. Theyyam is only popular in the northern part of Kerala only, in that districts of Kasaragod and Kannur. It's just there. It's not here in Kochi. In Kochi, in this area, we have Mudiyattu. And if it's there only in Ernakulam district and Kottayam district, in the medieval part of Kerala. And if you go further down, you have Padayani. And we have, for each and every village has its own forms, its own different forms. And each caste and community has their own forms. Sometimes a family has their own forms. This is a particular kind of thing which the family performs. So it's from Brahmins to the lowest caste. They have their own kinds of performances, their own way of performing, singing, rituals. There are more than 450 forms that have been listed. Now, after independence, after the so-called education and the progressive things coming to us, we thought that many of these forms are associated with religious beliefs, which doesn't have any reasoning. That's very crude, it's bad, it's not sophisticated, which is to be avoided. So many forms are dead, but practice is there here and there. And one major thing which connects the Kerala thing is from the other part of folk performances in India is that our performance tradition are more ritualistic. From Chow to Nautanki to Yakshagana to Terukuthu, there are more performance there to Pandavani. So when the other folk traditions, basically from India, from outside Kerala, is narrating stories, expressing the skills of and the craft of the people. Many of the folk forms, including Theyyam, are ritual acts. I'll just explain about Theyyam as an example, because the question has been asked by Deep. Theyyam, the word Theyyam means God. The literal meaning is God. See, in northern Kerala, this has been practiced. Theyyam is not one Theyyam. There are more than 400 different Theyyams with different costumes, different songs, different practices, different rituals, different activities. Something very big too. There are even Muslim Theyyams. A Muslim Theyyam is also there. And most of these Theyyams, and it is performed by comparatively lower caste people. It's not by the upper caste people. It's performed by the lower caste people, practiced by lower caste people. It's a way of addressing the God in their own way. And each Theyyam has its own story. And in most of the stories, this Theyyam, or this God, has been a very energetic, dynamic, heroic young man belonging to the lower caste. He studied the martial art form, he becomes a big warrior, and he becomes a very good fighter. And naturally, the upper caste people will be afraid of him. He can question the political right of the upper caste. So they wanted to avoid him, but they cannot directly fight with him. So they will do some technique, some craft in the story, so that he is sent to fight with an attacking enemy. He'll go and kill that enemy and come back successfully. But on the way, when he sleeps a little, this person is killed by the upper caste agents. And then his dead body will be taken back to the village, and said the story is being cooked up that no, he has fought and defeated the enemy, but he has been killed in the war. That can be one character. It's actually the story of one character. Or it can be a girl or a woman who is also molested and killed. It can be an upper caste woman also. There's a story of Muchilotu Bhagavati. The story is that there was the Brahmin, it's a Brahmin family. So the upper caste, the Pandits are engaged in debates. They are asking questions to mutually. So tell me that, tell me this, etc. So somebody will ask a question, somebody will again. Then one question asked was, which is the biggest pleasures of the world and biggest pain of the world? So who can answer that? Which is the biggest pleasure and biggest pain? And different pundits, men, came with different answers, but they didn't agree. There's a big quarrel. Then one young girl, an unmarried girl, from the house, she was hearing all this debate, and then she came out and asked, "Can I answer the question?" They said, "Okay, you answer." Then she said that the biggest pleasure is sexual pleasure, and the biggest pain is the pain of giving birth to a child. So that's the answer she gave. The sexual pleasure is the biggest pleasure, and the biggest pain is the pain of delivering a child. So naturally, right, that's the right answer. But how come this girl understood this? How come she know about it? Again, the moralist started saying that she might have experienced it. She is no more a virgin. She have experienced sex. She might have given birth to a child in secret without the society knowing it. So she is to be punished. She is a culprit. So this girl has been killed as a punishment. See, after the murder of the hero from a Dalit community or a lower caste community or a woman or some other character, see, their spirit, they don't leave the earth. So they'll just start living there, the spirit of this dead person or this killed person. And they'll start creating problems in the village. They'll start creating pandemics like smallpoxes or dislocation in the rain, harvest, unanswered deaths. So mishappenings and tragedies in the village, they create it. Suddenly the people will come and find, so why this is happening right now? Why this thing is happening now? And then somebody will come that, no, it is the spirit of that killed person is roaming around, and she or he is creating the problem. Then they'll say, pray to her or him, sorry, we'll do one thing, we'll make a temple for you. We'll give a space for you. It's not a very normal temple as we see the Brahminic. It's just a tree and a stone or something like that. It's more in the open air, on in the nature. So it's part of nature. When they say that this spirit, this Muchilotu Bhagavati, Muchilotu is the house name or the village name, is going to be seated here. She will be there. So please be there. Once in every year, we will perform your story to you. We will put up the costume and all those things, and we'll be doing that story to you. And you are free to visit us on that day. So till then, please don't make any problems. So they create these spacious temples, and then this ritual of performing this Muchilotu Bhagavati Theyyam starts. Of course, it has got its own rituals. And the most essential thing is that a performer will put a costume. It's a big, colorful costume. You might have seen photographs, etc. It's very popular. And then there's songs, musicians, there are activities. And one major difference is that while they are performing the story, the belief is that this person who is a performer gets possessed with the spirit, the God. So the body of the actor, the performer, becomes the vehicle of the performance. So, sorry, the spirit. So the extra spirit or the God or the supernatural entity comes and visits the body, and now it's present in the body. And this performer can do great feats like jumping into fire, doing extra human things which are otherwise not possible. So he is the God then. So it's a transition of the performer to the God. It's a kind of transition from a shift from the normal human being to a superhuman being. And then onwards, the audience, the spectators are waiting for this. They are waiting to see the God personified in before them. They'll go and they'll tell their problems. No, for example, no, I am having a disease in me. It's not going. So please help me. Then this God will answer. Okay, I understand. You are doing a lot of bad things in your life. That's why. So don't do those things. And you be thoughtful about me. You just think about me. And by the year I come again next year, you will be okay. You will be safe. And then this person gives some money to him, and he'll be giving some flowers from the costume and as a prasada, or sometimes with turmeric. Even he will take it and go. So the audience has a possibility to speak to the God in person and get the blessings, talk to him and back. So this is a kind of transition happening from realism to this thing. And this is happening in many other forms. Like in Mudiyat, it happens. After the murder of Dwarika, then this person was performing as as Kali, is getting seated. The audience go and pray to avoid those certain things, give money and get the blessings. So this blessings and this belief part, take it beyond it. I'm not that much keen about that. I am much more worried about, more concerned about the transition that can happen in performance. So there's a kind of trance that happens. The body language of the actor changes unknowingly. The body language changes. The vocal rendering changes. He starts speaking in a different kind of voice. He may be speaking in another kind of Malayalam. He can speak directly to the gods. He can speak to the human. So he's connecting the supernatural with the ordinary human beings. He's connecting the storyline to the problems of the person. And that's very important. And he's in a kind of trance. When you talk to this actor who is doing it, he will say that, no, I don't know what happened to me. So he's going from the very conscious mind to the limits of the consciousness to the subconscious level. And from there, he starts behaving as a different person. And this shift is a very interesting shift in the process of acting itself. That's what I think. So getting into a kind of, it's not me, it's Stanislavski, the master of modern realism, who has said this term. He said, the threshold of consciousness. When you're acting, now I'm speaking about Stanislavski, not the Folk Theatre of Kerala. Stanislavski said, so when you're acting, by the whole technique of the system, the method acting like magic key, truth and belief, all those things, and emotional memory, sense memory. So you create a kind of thing where your body and mind, this connection between the body and the mind has been opened, and whatever happens in the mind gets reflected in the body, and what happens in the body goes back to the mind. So that is happening, and then you started acting unconsciously or subconsciously. You need not think what should be my gesture. You need not think where should I look now. You need not think what is the gesture. You need not think what is the tone. You need not think where I have to underline. You need not think any nuances of the thing while you are acting. But in your practicing, when you are training, you are doing it very consciously. But once you are prepared on the body and the mind and your voice, then if you're involving into the truth and belief situation, in the reality of the situation, then naturally your consciousness, you grow to a kind of the space of the threshold of consciousness, and something happens on stage in your body subconsciously, and then we see the best of acting when we believe that this is right. See, this reaching the threshold of acting is the maximum height an actor can reach. That's what Stanislavski said. And he has his own system of methodology to do that. But what I was trying to tell you is that
টেকনিক্যাল সমস্যা হয়ে গেছে। কিছুক্ষণের মধ্যে আবার কন্টিনিউ হচ্ছে। Please you কোনো একটি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ টেকনিক্যাল সমস্যার জন্য উনি আর আসতে পারলেন না। তবু আমরা যেটুকু শুনলাম সেটুকুই আমাদের কাছে অনেক শোনা হলো। তা আমরা চেষ্টা করব আবার পরবর্তীকালে ওনাকে এই অনুষ্ঠানে নিয়ে এসে আরো ডিটেলসে কিছু আলোচনা করতে। তবে প্রায় তো 1.5 ঘন্টা হয়েই গেল আজকের সেশন। অনেকেই দেখলেন। রোহিত রাজাক, হাই, হ্যালো। লাভ কুমার, হ্যালো হ্যালো। আবার আমাদের নেক্সট সেশন 19 তারিখে আছে, সেকেন্ড ফেজ শুরু হচ্ছে। আপনারা এই অনলাইন থিয়েটার টিউটোরিয়ালের সঙ্গে থাকুন। রিশরা দুরায়নের এই উদ্যোগকে আপনারা অনেক মানুষের কাছে পৌঁছে দেওয়ার চেষ্টা করুন। শুধুমাত্র এটা থিয়েটার নিয়ে আলোচনা, থিয়েটার নিয়ে যে সমস্ত নানা রকম হিস্ট্রি আমরা জানি, আবার নতুন করে জানছি বা একটু রিভাইজ করে নিচ্ছি, এটুকুই আজকে অনুষ্ঠান অনলাইন থিয়েটার টিউটোরিয়াল এখানেই শেষ করলাম।